welcome to Donor Dialogue. Each month, we will bring you a conversation with a community leader about the current state of philanthropy, the donor experience, and insights into the donor and volunteer mindset. I'm Lindsay Blok, Senior Vice President of CCS Fundraising, an executive team member serving in Southern California and across the Southwest. CCS has been a strategic partner with nonprofit organizations for more than 70 years, raising funds, planning and implementing fundraising strategies, and impacting the world through philanthropy. After working with nonprofit organizations for 15 years, I'm particularly fascinated by the donor perspective, how our volunteers view nonprofit organizations and philanthropy, and how we can all work together to improve our communities. So today my guest is Larry Rosen. Larry has been a career YMCA professional since 1970. He served YMCAs in Los Angeles, Palo Alto, Santa Barbara Ventura counties, and the YMCA of the USA in a variety of leadership roles, finally retiring in 2014. In addition to continuing involvement with the national YMCA, Larry consults on organizational development, fundraising, executive coaching, and planning for nonprofit organizations and educational institutions. Larry has also been highly involved as a volunteer and donor for several organizations. For the past 22 years, Larry has served on the Board of Advisors of the School of Social Science, Policy, and Evaluation at the Claremont Graduate University. He was elected to the board of the Martin Luther King Community Hospital Foundation in 2016. He completed a 4-year term on the Board of Directors of the YMCA of the USA in 2010 and a 15-year term on the Board of Governors of the Josephson Institute of Ethics in 2013. I'm excited to share this conversation with you today, as I believe we'll gain insight into what a great donor relationship can look like from both sides of the table. Larry, thank you so much for joining me today.
Lindsay, my pleasure. Nice to be with you.
Great. Well, Larry, you've been part of organizations both as a donor and as a staff member. Can you tell us a little bit about your best experience you've had with an organization and why that experience as a donor was so good?
I think the part of the relationship as a donor that is the most satisfying is one in which the charity I'm involved in treats me as a person, not a donor, where their empathy for my interests and passions is evident in the relationship, and where they care by asking what I think. And to the extent charities have taken the time and the trouble and applied empathic means to understand me, I feel very comfortable being involved. And quite frankly, the checkbook comes out a lot more frequently. This is a process of relationship building that extends over an extended period of time if it's going to work. We talk about donor relationship management, and what we're really talking about is the recognition that commitment builds through involvement over time, and that this is a process that extends over a period of years and matures during that period of time. To think that it's going to be a quick hit and then multiple repeats is a naive assumption. The involvement has to deepen if the engagement is going to continue.
That's great. Can you share with us maybe a story about one of the organizations that you've worked with? What were the pivotal moments that you increased your engagement with them, where you were either asked to do so or came forward to do so, what that looked like?
Those that have asked me to do more, the Josephson Institute of Ethics is a good example, which was kind of a startup board without much experience. They knew the topic of ethics well, but not the business of a nonprofit board. And I was on the board as someone who understood that sector. So I was constantly being consulted by the CEO and by other board members about what's the right way to do this, what are the best patterns of governance, and in the area of fundraising, how do we establish relationships that could mature into philanthropy? That went on for 15 years, and it was a national board that did a lot of wonderful work in getting programs on ethics and character into the schools around the country.
So it was one-on-one conversations, it sounds like, more so than a mailer or a email.
Definitely. Now, these are the pre-pandemic days when we could actually sit in the same room and talk to each other. It just so happened that even though it was a national board, the headquarters office was in Los Angeles, where I was living. So, and I knew the founder, I knew Michael Josephson well. So our conversations were frequent and personal, and he was not at all bashful about picking up the phone or asking for us to have lunch. And that kind of involvement really, from the donor's perspective, deepens the commitment.
Looking to the flip side of that, what have you seen organizations struggle with the most when it comes to donor relationships?
Well, one is not understanding it's a relationship. I mean, that would be the first. The idea that the donor is an object of sales and persuasion is really a misbegotten notion. It's very common. I see it a lot. Actually, I see that more through the clients I work with in my consulting than I did in my own personal experience, because if an organization had that kind of approach to working with a donor or a volunteer, I would just separate myself from it right away. So in addition to struggling with the idea that it's a relationship that matters, I have seen charities fail, including ones I've been involved in, by failing to manage the details of stewardship. And when you fail to acknowledge gifts, when you fail to communicate frequently and clearly, when you fail to dot the I's and cross the T's when it comes to billing and acknowledgement and thanks, then what it tends to reveal to me as a nonprofit executive is that here's a nonprofit that may not be able to accomplish their mission. If they can't get the details of this kind of thing done, where else are they, do they have holes in the boat? So it's a warning flag, to be sure, when stewardship is haphazard, less than perfect. It should ideally exceed the donor's expectations. The donor should be so well treated in that stewardship relationship that they go, wow, these guys are really on top of it. I never would have expected them to come through like that. There's the old saw that you've probably heard many times. Every gift needs, in the course of a year, 7 thank yous. And kind of sticking to that math, and not religiously or rigorously or rigidly, sticking to that idea that multiple thank yous for the same gift is important reinforcement of the donor's intentions and the organization's appreciation.
I would love to hear, have you had those moments of maybe donor delight where an organization exceeded your expectations with a thank you or a way that they showed their appreciation?
I have. I'm having it now in my current term with the board of Martin Luther King Hospital in South Los Angeles. This is an exceptionally run hospital with a really wonderful development department and a gifted president of the foundation. And they understand they could teach philanthropy to anybody, and they understand all of its mechanics. And the hospital has only been in existence. It was born out of the ruins of what we used to call in Los Angeles Killer King, a county hospital that was so bad. It was an embarrassment to the county and to the state of California. That hospital died and had its certifications pulled about 8 years ago. And this hospital rose from the ashes of that. And in the space of I think it's about 5 years old now, it has raised over $70 million in a community that is as poor as any in the United States. So I'm constantly having my eyes popped open with wonder and amazement at how well they do. And I got to tell you, that kind of performance is, I can't wait to write the next check. It's exciting.
Is it that they're sharing this information with you on a consistent basis, or they're sharing good news, they're calling you up? You know, what does that look like on a daily basis for you?
They never miss an opportunity to let the board know. I don't know where they are in terms of it's a distributed membership of donors because it's a community hospital, and donors are actually regional and national. But in terms of the board, the CEO and the president of the foundation never miss an opportunity to tell us what's happening. It's usually in an email, sometimes it's with a video, and it's usually a minute and a half or 2 minutes worth of our time to notice it. But it keeps us connected to the good work going on. And especially during the pandemic, that work was inspiring. And their ability to tell those stories to us on a continuing basis not only pushed away the despair that comes with the pandemic. I mean, these are awful times. It gave you hope. There was a good example of things going on the way they should. And that was magical, really.
We've talked a little bit about you stepping forward or asking for more to do. What's been your experience, both, you know, as a member of the staff and as a board member, in terms of that relationship between staff and board, asking for help, asking board members to do things? What are your opinions about how board members should be approached, if at all, if often? What does that look like in your opinion?
I was fortunate in my career experiences to be early in my career to be in the company of very strong board members in the Los Angeles Y, which was probably the top fundraising YMCA in the world during those years. I was always in the company of experienced philanthropists and established leading citizens in both industry and other sectors. And one of them, a gentleman, the late Hubie Clark, who was a member of the board of directors of the YMCA of Metropolitan Los Angeles, had been Fortune 100 CEO of the Year in the 80s. He ran a huge oil tool company. And he was a generous philanthropist. And he told me, counseling me as a new CEO, he said, I have never left a board because I was asked to do too much or give too much. But I have left many because I wasn't asked to do more. And his instruction, Hubie's instruction, has stuck with me and has been golden in my relationships with donors and board members. Asking them to do more is flattering. Asking them to do more communicates how much their participation and opinions and skills are valued and how much they are needed for the success of the organization. So asking, can you tell me more about this? Can you serve on this committee? Can you chair this effort? Can you help me get a hold of the governor? Can you help me do this? Can you help me do that? No donor runs away from that relationship thinking they're being ridden too hard. They come back for more, and because it affirms their value. I think sticking with that and avoiding this trap of thinking, gee, if I keep asking this guy to do things, he's going to run away. I've never seen that. Hubie was right. So in all the years since I got that lesson from him, probably 30 years on, that was exactly right.
And how do you think about who to ask for what? You know, which board member do you ask for what kind of service or help?
It's our job as nonprofit executives to know those people really well. need to know what they love, what they don't like, need to know where their passions are. And it's knowing that allows me to ask the right question at the right time.
I think one of my favorite questions to ask is always, how did you become involved with this organization? Right?
Right.
And people just love to share, right?
They do. Yeah, my favorite question sitting on airplanes with strangers when they find out that I work for the Y was to go back to them and say, well, have you had any Y experience? No, I never did. I said, well, do you know how to swim? Oh, yeah, that was the Y. I said, do you have kids? Yeah. Are they in childcare? Oh, yeah, that's the Y. And he's just, by the time you've finished turning over a few shovels of dirt, you find out they were involved in the Y for 40 years and didn't think about it. So, yeah, it is fun to find that stuff out.
Mm-hmm. And I think people love to share, right? It's something that they hold dear, have a passion about, and want to share more about why they got involved, why they got invested, why they're spending their free time and, you know, income with this organization.
More charities, including the Y. Part of my consulting is to try to get the Y to recognize that membership in the Y is not a ticket to come in and play with the toys. Membership is co-ownership of the mission of the Y in a community. And the real thing, this would, I think, apply to all charities. We are better placed doing with than doing for. And if we do with, if we involve people in co-creation and co-production and co-ownership of the institution's mission, they are co-owners and they feel like partners. They don't feel like the recipients of service or goods and services. And that is an important bridge to philanthropy. The sense of ownership, the sense that this place needs me to fulfill a mission that we all share, that's powerful. If the best we can do is keep the place clean and keep the pool with enough chlorine in it and open the doors on time, okay, thanks for doing a nice job opening the doors, but that doesn't generate an interest in philanthropy. Owning the thing does. And I think there's a lot of room for, and I consult with a lot of different nonprofits, not just Ys. That's a lesson that's hard won for a lot of nonprofits to their peril. They're a little more oriented to serving and service than they are to doing with. And that's where we all have room to grow, I think.
And thinking a little bit about 2020 in comparison to everything else you've seen, you know, what do you think some organizations did well in their relationship with you last year? And what were some of the struggles that you saw?
The pandemic year was the spring cleaning that none of us wanted, that we all needed. It was a chance for all charities to reinvent themselves, to realign themselves with a different expression of their mission. And the charities, the nonprofit organizations that succeeded during the pandemic did that. They pivoted, you know, with their, you don't throw your mission in the basket, start over again. They redefined their mission to fit the needs of the community in a different way during the pandemic, given the limitations of operating. And I saw some marvelous and inspirational stories of organizations that denied the opportunity to operate out of their buildings and bring people together like they did on a daily basis, taking the work out to folks that were shut in, and making good use of these methods of video conferencing and collective work electronically. I saw some Ys. One Y that I work with had been raising about 10 million a year in philanthropy, and during the pandemic year went up to 14. The hospital that I'm on the board of raised a lot more money last year than it did in the 2 years before that. And it was because they were seen as being responsive to pressing community needs. And that's the other thing, Lindsay, I think, if I were going to say is an important lesson for all nonprofits, I have noticed over the last 20 years an increasing tendency of major donors, third-party funders like foundations and corporate funding, and philanthrocapitalists, the folks who've got way too much money, but who are charitably inclined. I've noticed a big shift from paying for programming to paying for outcomes. Mm. And the outcomes have to be defined in community terms, not organizational terms. Early in my career, I could raise a lot of money saying I took 5,000 kids to camp. I don't think I could raise a dime saying that today. I think I know what folks are tuned into is, does this work make a difference in metrics that are defined by the health of a community? Is civic engagement increasing? Is the rate of chronic disease declining? Is childhood obesity coming down? It's not enough to say you had 1,000 kids in the swimming pool. So what? What happened as a result of that? Did childhood obesity come down? Did rates of chronic disease come down? And more, people like Mackenzie Scott, I think, are looking toward evidence of outcome-based performance, not activity. And this is if philanthropists are looking for that and fundraisers don't adapt to it and organizations don't adapt to it, there's going to be a huge mismatch and not a lot of money will be raised. So I think there's always a bridge in these eras. So from paying for activity, which is all good, a lot of organizations never did anything that was bad, but whether it was consequentially significant in community terms is now the new yardstick. And I seen it emerging, and it's accelerating its emergence. And I think it's going to be the dominant theme in the next decade and beyond.
Fascinating. That's a great point. Do you see anything that you would attribute that shift to? Are there moments in time or culture change?
Yeah, well, I think one, donor research by donors, like Mackenzie Scott hiring Bridgespan, has become a lot more sophisticated. Better data are available more widely now because of electronic means and computer generated reporting. Mm-hmm. So it's easier to get indices of community health almost for any community and almost on any dimension. You know how many people are turning out in municipal elections to vote. So you have a measure of civic engagement and a whole bunch of other things on health equity and juvenile justice, and a whole bunch of things now have community metrics attached to them. So donors are starting, I know some foundations are explicitly asking, what are you doing about health equity? Well, we're in favor of it. No. What's changing in youth health equity because of the way you're working? I can see, and I have seen charities getting grilled on that, floating their programs and worthy work in front of a donor who shrugs. Okay, tell me about health equity. So I don't see that going back in the bottle. I think that's going to come out as the dominant theme for charities everywhere. And I'm talking to YMCAs about the need to move from an emphasis on organizational leadership to community leadership. The other thing that I see donors paying for with their philanthropic dollars is collective work. They are less interested in what any one nonprofit can do and are more attracted when they hear that nonprofit is partnered or connected to 12 or 13 other stakeholders in the community to get something done. No matter how good the nonprofit is, it is not going to move the needle on these community themes by itself. Mm-hmm. It's a conceit. And it's a conceit essentially we've lived with for a century. It's obsolete now.
I think there's a growing understanding that addressing one area might help in one area, right? Addressing homelessness isn't going to solve the issue of hunger, right? Addressing abuse isn't going to address all these other issues that come up. And so those partnerships become more and more valuable as people understand and get more savvy about causes.
That's absolutely true. One of the big issues in the pandemic was food insecurity. Food insecurity has been a factor in the inner city for decades, maybe forever. Communities of poverty are characterized by food insecurity. Kids go hungry. 20% of the kids in the country are living in poverty, and they are food insecure in addition to not having enough for clothes. So it is appropriate for thoughtful donors to ask, not are you delivering meals to the homeless? What are you doing to the prevalence of food insecurity in your community? If you can connect your work delivering meals to your partnership with the hospital, the school district, the Chamber of Commerce, the faith community, and other nonprofits to bring the rates of food insecurity in this community down, now you've got my attention. And it's a new way of thinking, it's a new way of working. It does not require you to be a partner with another nonprofit. It requires parallel work and connected work. So 20 of you can do something about that metric that one of you working alone could never do.
Right. Well, I'm going to throw a curveball at you here, because now we're seeing vaccinations coming up, the decrease in COVID rates, COVID infection rates. What do you see as some interesting priorities for nonprofit organizations in this coming year? What would you suggest they look at or focus on?
Civic engagement. It's the underappreciated, underutilized tool of community building, where people have a stake in their communities. I think public policy, in my experience, is influenced from the ground up. Communities that thrive become beacons to those interested in national policy. It's a fiction to believe that changes in policy at a national level will drive change locally. It's the other way around. Changes in policy at a national level can enable and support and are important. But I think the power for most nonprofit organizations is at the local level to create a sense of community ownership, affiliation. And I think I would look for indices of increasing engagement in community life. That can be increasing rates of volunteerism, which you would measure across all nonprofits. It would be increasing participation in things like PTOs and PTAs. It would be more candidates running for a city council and school board, which are the two most unsexy offices to hold in public life, but are critical. And instead of having 15% of the population turn out for municipal elections, how about 50%? What would it take in a community for that to happen? Communities with that kind of involvement are strong. So you could look at evidence of high functioning communities as positive deviants. It's not hard to find them. You can look at communities, and those that are thriving have certain characteristics around equity, engagement, health, and income distribution. And you say, what are they doing right, and how could we repeat that experience in our community. I think that's where we need to go after the pandemic. It's created a ton of wreckage, but I think it's created a ton of readiness for people to come together to make it better.
Well, I'd like to conclude our conversation today by asking you for one piece of advice that you would give to an organization leader, someone like an executive director, a CEO, a president.
One is this business of if you're going to raise money, be a donor. Understand how it feels to want to give more, to be happy with the way your gift was received and used. You need to know that as a personal life experience. And I always, throughout my career, promoted giving by staff, even though, and you don't have to give huge amounts of money. I use the term, both for board members and staff, your gift should be sacrificial. Mm-hmm. And you define sacrifice. It's not defined for you. So I always resisted on boards, for example, saying the minimum gift is $10,000 a year. I would say the minimum gift is the sacrificial gift. And nobody defines that but you. The other thing is the executive has to love the leaders he or she is working with. I think you have to care about them as people. And if they are interesting enough to you, if they are people of consequence to you emotionally, you will work differently with them than if they look like a wallet that's waiting to be opened. Treating donors as objects of marketing and sales is the worst sin a fundraiser could make. But a genuine relationship of appreciation opens all kinds of doors. And those two things, be a donor and be an empathic person who cares about the people across the table from you.
Those are both great pieces of advice. I couldn't come up with anything better, I think. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share with us today?
It's been fun talking to you, and congratulations to you and CCS for doing these webinars on important topics. These are messages that need to get out and need to be understood.
Well, and thank you for joining. I so appreciate you sharing your perspective and your insights and your experience. This has been wonderful.
My pleasure. I hope it's useful.
Thank you.